This is my WWE Payback 2013 pay-per-view review. The papers were out there a little while ago as far as my thoughts of the show from WWE. I thought this was a really good show from them. I mean, the last three matches of this pay-per-view definitely saved it a lot. I mean, some of the stuff on the undercard, while it wasn't terrible or really, hard and painful to watch, some of the stuff on the undercard was lackluster. I'll admit that. But the last three matches of this show are three matches I would say everyone definitely needs to check out. Those, last three matches, of basically the main matches of the show, you started off, those three matches with, a great match of the night with CM Punk versus Chris Jericho, the returning CM Punk in his hometown, Chicago. Great match right there, easily match of the night. Then you saw a very, entertaining, very good tag match with The Shield versus Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan. Then you saw a surprisingly good main event. Now, I knew Ryback and Cena, just like last month before they did the non-finish, that they could have a good match. Like, wasn't shocked to see a good match from them. I was shocked to see a good match out of them, in this 3 stages of hell, just because I wasn't really interested in the gimmicks of this match. Like, it didn't entice me to see it that much. Obviously the third fall made perfect sense, the way they did the non-finish last month with Cena getting put on the stretcher and Ryback being, helped away by the refs. So Ambulance match made perfect sense as the third fall. I wasn't looking forward to it for more or less the first 2 falls. You had the Lumberjack match, is one gimmick match I'm not a fan of at all. I mean, it was great in the 80s and somewhat of the 1990s. It could be put off good, but it's a match that just isn't good anymore. The tables match, I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I wasn't expecting much from that either. But they did a hell of a job. I got to give credit to Ryback and Cena. If it wasn't for CM Punk and Chris Jericho's match, the main event would be the match of the night, but you had Chris Jericho and CM Punk on there. But Ryback and Cena wasn't that far behind that match, at least in quality-wise, in my opinion. Both of them were very entertaining. Like I said, the undercard was not the greatest, but you didn't see anything too bad. Like, the worst thing on the pay-per-view, in my opinion, was just because the wrestlers didn't seem to click, was Dean Ambrose versus Kane for the U.S. title. That was probably the one match that I just could not get into, and I did not think that it was that good of a match. That was probably the worst match of the show, but it was at least still a watchable match. So let me get into my review. You had the pre-show match, which the pre-show match was Sheamus versus Damian Sandow. And for a pre-show match, this actually wasn't a bad match. I hate it that they did the break in between it, especially since, WWE's trying to act like, we're giving you a free match here, but then they did, like, the break in between the match. That's the only thing I hated about it. But, it's a match we would see on television, but it was fairly good for a pre-show match. Probably one of the better pre-show matches I've seen recently in a little while. And Sheamus ends up picking the victory after hitting the bro kick to Damian Sandow to pick up the victory. About 2 1/4, 2.5 stars. Not a bad pre-show match. Then the pay-per-view started. The first match of the actual pay-per-view was The Miz versus Curtis Axel versus Wade Barrett for the IC title. Wasn't a great match, wasn't a great opener, but I did really love the way it ended. That was the one thing that saved the first match, in my opinion, was the way it ended. I thought was great. The action in it wasn't bad. Started off a little slow, then they got into it. It really started picking up midway in the match. But then the end of the match comes when The Miz has Wade Barrett in the figure 4 leg lock. And, Miz is trying to get him to tap out. Wade Barrett looks like he's about to tap out. But before he thinks about doing that, Curtis Axel comes in there, gets the cheap victory, pins Wade Barrett. Wade Barrett had his shoulders down. So Curtis Axel is the new IC champion. So love the way he won it. He's a heel. So this is a great, a way for, a heel to win the title. Obviously, I know some people will be saying, well, considering, some of the very ways they've been claiming he's been getting victories, the stuff they've been doing with Triple H and some of the fluke victories and stuff like that, that it kind of hurts when he wins like this, but he's supposed to be your old school type of heel. So with that taken into account, it's okay he wins like this, and it doesn't really hurt his credibility too much, in my opinion. So with that, okay opener, not great, but okay. About 2 1/4, 2.5 stars. Then the next matchup was the Divas title match. This was a match that really surprised me. I mean, I'm not going to be praising the hell out of it, saying it was one of the greatest women matches I've ever seen. I'm not going to go that far. That's obviously overdoing it. But I will give some praise to it. I mean, I thought it was actually a pretty good Divas match for WWE, and this month of June, you know, the two mainstream companies, WWE and TNA. TNA had that really good women's match with Taryn Terrell and Gail Kim in the last knockout standing match. This obviously wasn't as good as that match, but this is a match that I would say, hey, if you're a fan of women's wrestling and want to see actually a good women's wrestling match, check this match out. I thought the stuff they did in the match was really good. I mean, the stuff with AJ Lee doing the Black Widow submission to Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn did a hell of a spear to AJ in this match. And then at the end of the match, towards the end, you know, you saw Kaitlyn do the spear to AJ. And Kaitlyn could look like she could have picked the victory up there, but she was basically taunting AJ, you know, blowing a kiss to her and all that, and saying, you know, I can beat you easy, but I'm not going to pin you now. And then the end of the match comes when Kaitlyn's trying to basically ram herself into the corner into AJ. AJ gets out of the way, then locks in the Black Widow submission for the second time in the match. Then Kaitlyn ends up tapping out, so AJ Lee is the new Divas Champion. So the pay-per-view starts off with two title changes already. Then the next matchup was Kane versus Dean Ambrose for the U.S. title. It was at least a watchable match. I will give it that. It wasn't terrible, but it just didn't seem like these two wrestlers could click. From the get-go, they just didn't seem like they could click. I wasn't expecting to be a great match, because sometimes Kane's matches can be good, sometimes they can be pretty bad, especially singles matches. But it wasn't terrible, but like I said, just didn't seem like they could click. I'm glad that Dean Ambrose did retain the title here. They kind of did, you know, a bullshit ending up with this match, with him winning via countout. So he doesn't pin Kane, he wins via countout, but he still retains the title. So that's at least a good thing right there. He's still the champion right there. Then the next matchup was Alberto Del Rio versus Dolph Ziggler for the world title. Within this match, they obviously were playing off, you know, the concussion that, you know, Dolph Ziggler got in real life that took him out of actually being able to compete at last month's pay-per-view, and he was able to compete on this pay-per-view. So they kind of turned it into a concussion angle. Now, I know some people, you know, especially some critics will be saying, WWE, this is not the best thing to do, considering, you know, in sports, especially, you know, considering, you know, the Benoit tragedy that happened many years ago, that doing a concussion angle after someone actually got a concussion might not be the smartest thing. I'm not gonna criticize WWE as much as I think some people probably will for them doing this, but as far as the match, Alberto Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler, really good match. You know, good back and forth action. It was, you know, just an average match from them too. I was expecting a little more from it, but from what you saw, it was fairly good. And they obviously, you know, like I said, played the part with, you know, Dolph Ziggler. You know, they did a part within this match. Alberto Del Rio basically kicked the shit out of Dolph Ziggler, and they played that into the end of the match. You know, Dolph Ziggler hit the zigzag, but couldn't go for the pinfall, because earlier in that match when Dolph Ziggler got kicked very hard by Alberto Del Rio, they were playing into the whole concussion thing, and you know, his head was hurting, and then Dolph Ziggler loses the match after he's about to get up. Looks like he's, you know, planning to do something with Alberto Del Rio. Alberto Del Rio just kicks him, and he wins the title right like that. So Dolph Ziggler's reign is already over, which is kind of expected. You know, with the money, when people have the Money in the Bank briefcase and they finally cash it in, they do not keep the title that long. I mean, most people, you know, they're lucky if they keep it 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, hell, if the whole concussion thing didn't happen a month ago to Dolph Ziggler, he might have lost it at last month's pay-per-view. So he's kind of probably lucky to keep it this long. I think he's a very talented wrestler, and I'm hoping that, you know, next time he has a title reign, you know, barring any injuries that take place when he has the title or something, that, you know, his next title run can be much better than this. As far as the match, I would say about 2 3/4, 3-star match. Wasn't bad, but I was expecting much more from it. Then the next matchup, this is when the show really picked up. This is the last, you know, 3 matches that I think everyone cared about this show the most for. And that started off with CM Punk versus Chris Jericho, the returning CM Punk to his hometown in Chicago. These two have great chemistry with each other, have excellent matches, and this was just like the other ones. Great back and forth action, good counters, reversals, just a hell of a match. Obviously, with Punk being the hometown boy, the crowd, you know, was into this match. They were eating it up, loved it, and just great match. One match that everyone needs to see on this pay-per-view. Definitely match of the night. And CM Punk picks the victory up after hitting the GTS to go to sleep to Chris Jericho. Great stuff in this match. Loved it. Definitely everyone needs to check it out. 4 and 1/4 stars. Definitely match of the night. Then the next matchup was the Shield of Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins versus RK-No of Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan for the WWE Tag Team titles. And this was a really entertaining tag team match. Started off maybe a little slow, then it kind of picked up a bit. Loved the stuff that Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins did. Randy Orton did some good stuff. Roman Reigns, he's kind of like the powerhouse of the team of Shield, so he got in his stuff as well. Just a really entertaining match. I was expecting something different with the ending. Like, I was expecting that Randy Orton was going to RKO Daniel Bryan at the end of the match, especially after they did one thing where Daniel Bryan was trying to dive out onto Reigns and Rollins. Roman Reigns and Rollins got out the way, and he accidentally knocked down Randy Orton that was outside the ring. So you were thinking, okay, Randy Orton's laid down outside the ring. Daniel Bryan did that by accident. Randy Orton's going to think he meant to do it. So most people probably thinking, Randy Orton's going to play a role in the end of the match with, RKO and Daniel Bryan or walking away. That did not happen. The end of the match comes when, this was before Randy Orton got back into the ring. Roman Reigns speared the hell out of Daniel Bryan. Looked like he was going to go for the pin there. This is when Orton got back in the ring. He RKO'd Reigns. And then Rollins threw Orton outside the ring. And then Rollins hit the knee to Daniel Bryan for the back of the head. And Rollins goes for the pin and wins the match and retains the titles for Shield. And just a really entertaining tag match. Definitely a really good match. 3.5 stars. Really good tag match, like I said. And then the main event was the 3 Stages of Hell match. This was Ryback versus John Cena for the WWE title. The only thing I can say before I give my thoughts of this match is I kind of wish Ryback would have won the title, but I'm not going to be one of these people that are going to hate that Cena retained, because I'm actually a fan of John Cena. I think he's, he gets a little too much flack on the internet. He might, be more just a entertainer than actually a wrestler, but he can have good matches. And this was a really good match, definitely much better than what I was expecting. The first fall in this 3 Stages of Hell was the Lumberjack match, which this was the one thing that kind of turned me off of this match in the first place, because the Lumberjack stipulation, worked good in the 80s, somewhat in the 90s, but has not been a good stipulation in a long time. But they did a hell of a job in here, Ryback and Cena and the wrestlers outside the ring to make the, first fall, the Lumberjack match very entertaining. I mean, this match did not start off that slow. I mean, it went on fast, very quick. Good back and forth action with them two, beating the hell out of each other, throwing each other out the ring. The Lumberjacks obviously going after, Ryback and Cena when either one was outside there, primarily going for Cena and beating him down. And then the biggest moment of the first fall of the Lumberjack match was you had Ryback outside the ring. Some Lumberjacks were starting to gang up, beat him down. Other Lumberjacks were like, why are you doing this, trying to get Ryback back into the ring. You saw all the Lumberjacks, all the wrestlers outside the ring, brawling with each other. Then Cena got on the top rope, dived out onto the floor, onto all of them. All of them fell down. Great spot right there. And then the end of the first fall comes when it gets back into the ring with Ryback and Cena. And Ryback hits the shell shock to win the first fall. So Ryback wins the first fall right there. And then before the second fall actually starts, before the bell rings, Ryback gets Cena outside the ring, powerbombs Cena into a table before the second fall starts. Then they get back into the ring. The bell rings. That's the start of the second fall, which is the tables match. And they did some really good stuff in this fall as well. Good counters of getting out of being thrown into the table. I really liked some of the stuff they did in here. Obviously, everyone knew it was going to the third fall, so Cena was obviously going to win this fall. Then he ended up hitting the attitude adjustment to Ryback through a table, won this fall, so then it was 1-1, going to the third fall for the ambulance match. I think WWE did a great job with this third fall with the ambulance match. Normally, they do the very boring thing that makes these ambulance matches not entertaining, is the wrestlers, you know, do try to beat the hell out of each other, and you do see some good stuff from time to time in ambulance matches, but a lot of the time it consists of the wrestlers just trying their best to get the other wrestler onto, you know, a gurney or a stretcher and will them to the ambulance, and that's the whole thing of the ambulance match. You did not see this in this ambulance match, which I thought was very original and good and made it much better than what it probably would have been. You saw them, you know, brawling on the ramp, then going to the ambulance. They tore the shit out of this ambulance. You saw Ryback, you know, he was trying to punch Cena. His hand hit through the glass window, so the windows broke. And then Cena, when they were on the other side of the ambulance, Cena or Ryback opened up the door. Cena threw Ryback into the door. The door fell off. Then Ryback basically, you know, tore off a part of the ambulance on the other side, was beating the hell out of Cena on it. And then towards the end of the match, towards the end of this fall, you see Cena get the lights off the top of the ambulance and hit Ryback with that. And then Cena's on top of the ambulance looking like maybe he's going to dive onto Ryback. That did not happen. Ryback ends up getting on top of the ambulance with Cena, you know, kind of back and forth right there, what was going to happen at the end. And then Cena gets the upper hand, and Cena hits the attitude adjustment on Ryback through the ambulance. Ryback goes through the ambulance after Cena hits the attitude adjustment. Great way to end the match. Obviously, you know, I already said that I wish Ryback would have won this match, but it was a hell of a match nonetheless. I mean, I really thought this was a hell of a main event, I got to say. I mean, if it wasn't for CM Punk and Chris Jericho, the main event, you know, most pay-per-views normally, this main event, this type of quality, I would say, I would give the main event 3 3/4 stars. Most times, this main event, what they did right here, most of the time, this probably would be the match of the night, but CM Punk and Chris Jericho stole the show, which I think everyone was expecting them to do. I don't think anyone really was shocked that, you know, CM Punk and Chris Jericho stole the show. I mean, that was almost a giveaway, especially with it being in Chicago. You knew CM Punk was going to put it all out in the line, and him and Chris Jericho would have a great match. But the main event was really entertaining, I thought. Now comes the next thing, which I'm kind of fearful WWE might do, is next month we obviously have the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, and I'm hoping they don't go the route of Ryback winning a Money in the Bank match, winning the Raw Money in the Bank match, and having the Money in the Bank briefcase, then, you know, finally cashing in on Cena and having this very cheap, tarnished victory. I just hope they don't do that, because that's really going to hurt them, and especially, you know, if they do the typical thing when someone cashes in the Money in the Bank, that they are pretty much a paper champion. They don't keep the title that long, so that's going to be terrible if they do that with Ryback. I'm hoping someone else other than Ryback wins the Money in the Bank. Maybe, you know, do what's rumored to be maybe a SummerSlam match, have Daniel Bryan win the Money in the Bank briefcase, have him, you know, actually have a legitimate match with Cena. He does not have to beat Cena at SummerSlam, but have, you know, a legitimate match and have, you know, Daniel Bryan and Cena at SummerSlam. I would like to see that. Or, you know, do something else. I just hope they don't do the Ryback thing where he gets like a very cheap, tarnished victory when he finally wins the title, because they definitely need to give him the title at some point. I mean, obviously, if they wait too long, the fans are going to lose a lot of interest, which I think at this point, a lot of fans have probably lost some interest with Ryback since, you know, he's been given all these chances and has not won the title. But as far as the pay-per-view, definitely a good show. Last 3 matches are the matches that you need to check out. And the other match, you know, if you're a fan of women's wrestling, I would say, hey, if you're a fan of women's wrestling, the other match, other than the last 3 matches that you need to check out, is the Divas match on this pay-per-view. Because if you're a fan of women's wrestling, I would recommend it to you. But as far as the show, I give it about, you know, 7.75, maybe even an 8 out of 10, just because I really enjoyed the last 3 matches a lot. Like I said, the pay-per-view had some flaws with it, but still, overall, a good show. And that's it for my WWE Payback 2013 pay-per-view review. All right, peace.